Hello, everyone. Welcome to the channel. We're going to be diving in today and we're going to be reacting to this question and answer video that Richard Dawkins did a little bit ago. Obviously, Richard Dawkins is kind of like, is he one of the four horsemen of atheism? I think that he is one of them at least, or new atheism. I don't know. He's been pretty important in terms of just like atheism generally in America. I think that I have learned a lot from him and really appreciate his insights and stuff like that, and the way that he's stood up for like evolution and not teaching that stuff in or creationism in schools. So I have a lot of respect for Richard Dawkins generally. I do have some issues with like maybe some of his opinions. I just don't agree with some of his opinions. Let's fully dive in, and we're gonna start this reaction. All right.
Catherine Campbell states, she says, I get really discouraged about the grasp of religion and wokeism on people. Are you optimistic about the future? And if so, why or how? Thank you for your work.
I'm sort of optimistic in the sense that these things come and go. And I think that, for example, just as McCarthyism is now dead, whereas in the 1950s it was extremely powerful, I think that the sort of dictatorial wokeism that we're seeing at present will pass in the same kind of way. Religion has a much longer history, of course.
I guess I find it very interesting to call it dictatorial wokeism. That's fascinating to me. I guess like maybe I don't see like the blue-haired pronoun person as like a dictator. I more see it as kind of like just someone who's like, sharing their opinion. I will say that if he's talking about like the cultural phenomena of people being upset with people being like publicly transphobic or something like that, I could see where he's coming from.
To go.
What do you think are the mechanisms that shift the tides back into alternate directions? That you've probably seen enough of that happen over time.
Yes, that's interesting, isn't it? Just a gradual shift of opinion. I don't know what it is. People sometimes say something like it's in the air. Opinions just seem to shift all over the world, all over the parts of the world that we see much of anyway. It's hard to tell. I think it's a sort of combination of gossip and dinner party conversations and newspapers, journalism, judges, courts of law, all these sorts of things contribute to the shift of opinion. And I'm just looking forward to the change in the present climate of opinion.
I mean, I'll just say
what I wanted to say here is to say that the changes in our political climate are just because it's in the air seems incredibly reductive to me. That seems incredibly reductive. The issue is that saying that this is just about maybe like it's just a the cultural winds are changing or whatever. You know what I mean? I feel like that just dismisses kind of the cultural things that are happening. For example, like the summer of 2020 was huge for things like civil rights and the whole George Floyd Black Lives Matter protest situation. And I think that was a huge cultural shifter. Additionally, like Trump's presidency, even this presidency and his existence in the world, I think has massively impacted culture, massively impacted the way that people interact with each other, the way people feel confident about being expressive about their opinions that maybe they have been a little bit more quieter about in the past.
I mean, nothing to J.K. Rowling, who's really out there in the thick of it. She's invited the Scottish government to arrest her, and it will be very entertaining if they do. She's not an easy person to put in prison, I would have thought.
Okay, for J.K. Rowling, like she legitimately is like severe, like very transphobic. Like, for example, like ignores history, makes pretty baseless claims, I think. And I think that her position is, in my opinion, extremely ridiculous. And if people see her behavior as innocent, I'm questionable. I find that pretty questionable for me. Makes me feel a little bit gross.
In the thick of it, she's invited the Scottish government to arrest her. And it will be very entertaining if they do. She's not an easy person to put in prison, I would have thought.
Correct. But I suppose it's the people like that happening in greater numbers that'll have for the tides to turn. They say, okay, well, I guess if we express this opinion, we won't be fired from our jobs, we won't be put in prison, so maybe it's okay. Okay, Chris C. wants to know, are Islam and wokeism signs of the weakness of humanism to protect strong Western values? Some people even use it as a religion to help anti-Western values to expand with non-scientific dogmas. humanism could be reformed, or will it be replaced by something else?
I suppose you
Okay.
could say that Western liberals are soft on both. So if you think about the sort of pro-Islamic bias of Western liberals, which runs flat contrary to what we all believe about feminism, about the treatment of women, about the treatment of gay people.
Okay.
And yet,
Yeah, I'd love that.
whereas
Good point.
they're very quick to criticize Christianity for poor treatment of women, for abortion and anti-abortion and so on, Islam gets a free pass. And so to that extent, I suppose, softness towards.
Okay. So this position, I think, is interesting as well, because we're doing this thing that's like, he's going to start doing it later where he's going to say, like, they rarely condemn Islam, but they're always going to condemn Christianity like it's a negative thing. And we also know that very recently, this is actually a position that he's had for a long time. He's quoted to be a conservative, a cultural Christian. And then he had another interview very recently where he reiterated that position and kind of basically said, like, I'm so concerned about Islam and the way that Islam is happening in the West or whatever, and is very worried about like that religion taking over. So my position is that perhaps I think that it is true to say that there are liberals who are softer on Islam for some reason. And I say this mostly because I've seen other like YouTube atheists like talk about Islam and be like, hey guys, Islam is also a religion and we shouldn't be as, like open to this religion, like, because it is a pretty harmful religion. And I would say just like Christianity. There are different types of concerns with these different types of religions. And I think that they're both equally concerning. And to pretend, and I'm not sure if this is what he's doing, but to pretend that, Islam is somehow like this very terrifying, scary thing, and that Christianity is not the same thing, that to me is pretty disingenuous. And that is icky in my opinion.
Islam and softness towards wokeism go together. I get that point.
The softness towards wokeism is the other thing. And this is why I also just have a difficult time, because who can even define what wokeism is? I hardly can understand what wokeism actually is. Okay. So now they're over here saying that liberals are soft on wokeism. I don't know what he's talking. Is he talking? I'm not. And that's what I mean about this word is very difficult.
Marcos wants to know on X how genes related to the sexual orientations, how genes relate to sexual orientations and gender.
Okay.
Sexual orientation, I take that means homosexual, heterosexual, that kind of thing. Right. It's difficult to investigate these things. One of the ways to do it is twin studies, where you look at, if you have a pair of identical twins and if one of them is gay, is there a strong tendency for the other one to be gay? And the answer is yes. If you compare that with fraternal twins, with non-identical twins, who share only half the genes, as opposed to all of them, of the relevant ones. So yes, there is a genetic component to sexual orientation, and that I believe is established. It doesn't mean it's inevitable, but
okay. I think that it's what is that called? Inappropriate for him to say that that's established. The only reason is because, like, for example, right after I saw this, I like went to the internet and just kind of like generally Googled is being gay genetic, and they're kind of like, there are many different aspects of it. And so I don't know. I think from my perspective, and mine might be narrow. Someone please come at me, and not come at me, but let me know if there are other opinions, better opinions or whatever. But I don't think that it's established that homosexuality is like purely genetic. And like I said, I'm not sure if that's what he's exactly implying. It does seem that he's allowing for some flexibility within this response, but I don't know. For me, it seemed a little too certain. It just made me a little uncomfy, but that's on me.
That there is a strong strong genetic component to the variation.
Question from Angie: why do you, a man of science, deny the reality that trans people exist? Why do you feel the need to hate a minority group that only wants to live their life as their true self and be left alone?
That's a ridiculous question. I don't deny their existence, and I don't in any way oppress them. What I object to is the statement, a a woman can have a penis. A trans woman is a woman. I object to that because that's a distortion of language and a distortion of science. But as for saying they don't exist, that's absurd. Of course they exist.
Okay.
And there's no reason why they shouldn't.
So to say that trans women aren't women, I'm pretty sure that's the position where it's like you essentially are kind of are being pretty transphobic in the sense that like if you cannot if you call that a distortion of language, I have an issue, because distortions of language is how the human language develops. And I'm using the word distortion because he's used this word, right? I don't believe that it's a distortion because I use the word sick, right? That is sick, dude, as a way to say that something is super cool. Am I destroying the word sick? Now, sick people are never gonna know who they are, and it's gonna be like, you know what I mean? Like that to me, that is the ridiculous aspect. And I think like if we were to be so narrow as to exclude any other definitions or possible definitions of the word woman, right? Like in that situation, I understand where he's coming from. If he literally refuses to expand his mind at all, and I think that one thing that's frustrating is like, I don't know, I guess that this is, yeah, like this is, I just feel like this is very natural with how life goes. Like things are expansive. We learn new things. We're willing to be curious about different changes and stuff like that. That's great. Yeah. The evolutionary biologist doesn't know that biology and sociology are two different things. Correct. And like I've said this several times before, like typically, like the typical woman is going to be, an adult human female, or that's whatever that stupid word is. And that's just like accurate because, that's just the way that the standard deviation, the distribution of human beings, that's how it tends to be. You know what I mean? But we still know, that's why we kind of call it like this bimodal distribution, right? We see these things they do have overlaps. He's going to mention something in the future where if he did the research, he would understand that he was actually factually incorrect, but we'll get there in a couple seconds.
Exist.
Right. And I find that it's so easy in these conversations nowadays because language has been co-opted in such a way where you can't actually say something as it is without being accused of, denying that someone exists.
Well, exactly. Yes. I mean,
okay. As we challenge individuals, I guess, and say like, hey, I'm challenging this position. I think that it's important that we are extremely, if you want these people to I guess, think that you're in the best faith, you do not have to do this if you don't want to. But I think that if that person made a comment that was not because I understand, because he's going to say, I didn't deny their existence of trans people. I didn't say that they didn't exist. I just think that, the whole concept of like calling a trans woman a woman is fucking ridiculous. Like if they were able to be very clear about what exactly they have an issue with Richard Dawkins language, I feel like he wouldn't be able to dismiss the entire question. So this part, yeah, it gives him too much room to just be like, oh, you're just silly. This is silly. Oh, no, I'm not. That's not me. I'm not. No, I don't think that of course they exist. I just don't really believe that we should know that they are who they say they are. Or I don't believe that like human language can change at all. Like he's also saying those things. So if we can slow down, really pay attention and listen to what these people are saying, we can better, in my opinion, attack their position because we actually understand where they're coming from and what they're actually saying. Because if you say, you said this or you believe this, they'll go, no, I don't. I don't believe that. I don't believe this. So that's one thing that I've been noticing, and one thing that I feel like could be useful if we're interested to kind of like attack other positions, or, I don't know about if attack is the right word, but you guys get what I'm saying. They're usually projecting their sexual preferences and a response to not wanting to admit that they run across a trans woman and never know it or be attracted to one. I definitely think that exists 100%, and people are very insecure about that as well. This one as well, yeah. That part is really odd as well. Yeah. The narrative that like trans people, if like a trans woman is marked as a woman, like they're going to like skew the stats of some in some type of way. I think that's what you were mentioning, or that's what you were getting at, Jamie. Thanks for your
to go from saying that a trans woman is not a woman as a scientific fact to saying you think they don't exist, meaning they don't live and they shouldn't live. That's ridiculous.
So like, I disagree. And this was what I was talking about, but to say that like a trans woman isn't a woman is a scientific fact, I disagree. I don't think that woman is a scientific term. I do not. I think that female is a scientific term. To say that a trans woman isn't, born biologically female, I'm sure, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think anybody's necessarily disagreeing with that. But as a person, literally goes through processes to medically change their sex hormones, like they then may need to even change their medical care and stuff like that. So I feel like if it's medically relevant, then it's scientifically relevant, and then I don't think that it should be ignored.
Yeah.
I'm fed up with that kind of distortion.
Or to assume that what you're saying is somehow hateful. That too, right?
Well, quite. I mean, that's totally ridiculous. It's simply a scientific fact that sex is determined in a biological way, which I could go into, but probably won't.
Well, yeah, sex is determined in a biological way. Sex and gender are different things.
And the fact that people have a psychological feeling that they're born into the wrong body, that's a psychological fact, which I think is probably true. And I have great sympathy with such people.
And I actually was just thinking about this.
Yeah, I don't think, because and I think that just saying, for example, that it's just a feeling is dismissive to the research that we have that has proven that we understand that the structures of transgender individuals oftentimes matches that of their gender. That's kind of what it is. Jamie says, we aren't the people screaming at cis people and misgendering them delightfully. That's kind of the thing. I think if a trans woman, and I know that these arguments kind of, I think, are strongest when we go for the whole, someone who has been able to fully transition, and, the whole passing situation, I feel like is the, sorry. Not hateful, I just say incredibly hateful things. Yeah, and I just think they're dismissive, they're in the long term that they definitely are harmful. They're I'll keep using that word, dismissive. I think that's that'll kind of be the whole thing. I want to know, Anima, what do you mean by does that make it biological? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Okay, let's move on.
This last week, and I'm curious what you feel some of the larger implications might be for science. These sort of culture wars, given that all of scientific study separates people by sex. You have your male and your female studies being done. It's very important to do so. What happens when all of a sudden, we're sort of denying that fact?
Sex throughout the animal and plant kingdoms is defined by gamete size. Sperms are tiny compared with eggs, and that defines the sexes all over the animal kingdom. And we understand why that is, we understand how that came about, we understand the universality of it. That is the universal biological definition of...
I guess, to my, the systems match aspect of gender. Oh, and that does make it biological. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I would, being trans to me is a biological scientific fact. Yes, I will agree with that. Okay.
Sex differences. The way sex is determined in various animals is very different. In mammals, it's the XXXY system. In birds, it's a similar system, but the other way around. As you know, in mammals, it's the XY that's the male. In birds, it's the equivalent of the XY that's the female. In many reptiles, it's done by temperature. In some fish, it's done by dominance hierarchy. So there are a lot of different ways in which sex is determined in embryology. But sex is defined by gamete size.
What is, I guess... determined and defined. I'm interested in, I guess, the differences of what those words even mean. Okay. Sex, yeah. If other people can kind of help me out to even get what he's trying to say there, that would be awesome. Because it's yeah. So for example, I 100% agree that gamete size is an important factor in determining sex. Absolutely. I'm not going to disagree with that. But there are, to my understanding, there are also other aspects Okay, prescription versus description. Okay, perhaps it could be like a prescriptive definition versus the descriptive one, potentially. Because yeah, within different animals, there are some differences in terms of even like how they sexually reproduce and how many sexes and stuff that they may have and stuff like that. And we know that in certain species of animals, they can have things like sexual dimorphism in their bodies, like half and half and stuff like that. And then, hold on, I'm getting to something that he's going to say here that I wanted to.
It's a universal biological definition. There are no exceptions to that.
What are you?
That there are no exceptions. As soon as he said that, I was like, are you sure? And then I looked it up. I was like, is there any recorded history of for example, a human being specifically having multiple different like types of gametes? And I think, and I have not finished my studies, but so far it seems to be inappropriate to say that there are 100% no exceptions from that. Yeah, that's my kind of thought in that one there. Yeah, I think, and he's done this like a couple of times in this conversation where I think that he's like made statements that, for example, somebody watching will kind of take as scientific fact, like being gay, being like a strictly, like being strictly tied to genetics or something like that. And I don't think that you can make that kind of a statement. All right, so we'll move on from there. It says, what are your thoughts on the rise of pseudoscience and anti-scientific sentiment in contemporary society? For example, the claim that males can be women. Okay. All right, yeah, he does the argument from authorities fallacy a lot. That is definitely what I'm noticing. Okay.
Just as we were speaking about, this is a question.
Yes, I'm not sure what the questioner has in mind there. If it is about the denial of sex differences, then I guess we've just covered it. But maybe they mean something else.
I think that was certainly an example that fits.
Well, creationism would be another one. Would be another stark case which has been around for a while, and that again.
Okay, so like, yeah. Oh God, to compare. Okay, to compare, like you said, like this is a sociological phenomena of gender, of the way that we experience gender in the real world. This is not a scientific fact. They're not scientific facts generally. They're things that we witness, we see how people behave. We kind of prescribe these things as we're witnessing them unfold in this complex like process. It is ridiculous to state that transgender stuff generally is anything like creationism, which is false from the very concept of it, that it is even possible for a creator to exist. Hey, Slick, it's good to see you too. But yeah, that to me is super frustrating. That's what I mean. Yeah, they're doing this to paint trans people as some made up thing. That's frustrating to me. I'll just pause for just like a quick second. I get so frustrated with kind of the like, yeah, Richard Dawkins is like totally atheist. Right, yeah. Richard Dawkins is like obviously fully atheist and is very popular in his atheism. And the way that he's doing this is just frustrating, because I think like there is a lack of skepticism, in my opinion, towards this anti-trans shit. I watched another skeptic have someone come onto their channel talking about how transgender people believe that they have gendered souls. I said, excuse me? My atheist ass believes what? Can you come again? That's incorrect. And he was just like, wow, oh, and like didn't even act like, I was like, you're supposed to be a skeptic. I thought okay. Fuck skepticism then. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Oh, oopsie. Well,
And is deplorable. The science is absolutely clear, and it's deplorable that so many people in America still think the world is only 6,000 years old. I mean, that's a real absurd denial of scientific fact.
Absolutely. But there's also,
see, that is where me and Ricky agree there. It's disturbing to me that so little people accept evolution in America. I did the research the other day, and it is somewhere around the 50%, like 48 or 60, like it's somewhere around that range. And I was like so distressed, so distressed. Yeah. Oh, look at that. Even this one's interesting. Even theists believe in gendered souls. So why sing about trans theists? That is interesting. And you're right. There probably are some trans theists who do believe in a very spiritual version of their transgender experience. I do think about like a two-spirit individual or something like that, because though to my understanding, it is very much like within their creation story, it is very much like a mixture of remnants of the male and female soul, to my understanding. But that is not a religion. To call that experience a religion, separate from like other religion or other religious paradigms or something, is bonkers. Let's go with that one. Bonkers to me.
this huge rise of sort of anti-scientific inquiry because of social media and the rise of influencers and healers and people who are going out there saying, don't pay attention to the mainstream sort of line of thinking. And this has become popularized.
Yes, is it? I guess I don't maybe follow the right influences to know that.
It's shocking. I mean, everything from, I'll tell you one example that I've seen gain a lot of traction is women who reject the idea of having a hospital birth and want to do sort of midwife home birthing. And I don't know enough. I've never been pregnant. I've never had a child. I don't know enough about this process of giving birth to know what is sort of right or wrong. But I do know that childbirth for women for many, many, many years, throughout history, there was a likelihood of death from giving birth. And those rates went way down when you started doing hospital.
Yes. Well, humans are not very good at this because we have a conflict between the need to have a big brain and the difficulty of passing through the female pelvis. And so it's an uneasy.
So like, I feel like I'm trying to be a good, well-rounded person. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, I think these points, for example, are really good. Like, it's really good to talk about this stuff because like the crunchy stuff being like, it's bad to go to the hospital. No, you could totally go to the hospital. And also I think in this part, I think he is also a little bit dismissive of the technology of doulas that like doulas have, I think, advanced in their kind of understanding of birth and like their skill and stuff as well. That's my sorry. So he said those rates also went down when doctors started washing their hands. That's so true. Anima says it feels like neither one of them knows enough about these subjects. I could feel that. But yeah, and I'm not even gonna criticize someone for chatting a little bit about a topic that they don't know, because I do it a lot. But the one difference is like Richard Dawkins is just like an authority, like seen as an authority, like someone who is, his opinion is highly valued. So that's maybe one of the things that I would say. You're a very popular person. Maybe you have a higher responsibility to be a bit more responsible with.
Is a compromise, which is exceedingly painful and as you say, dangerous, unless you're having proper supervision. Because many births are perfectly natural and work perfectly well, but
just the idea that our heads are so big. And like we just have to cause so much damage to get out of our mothers or our parents just because of how big our brains are. I just think that that's kind of silly and ridiculous, and kind of the whole like evolutionary trade-off thing, to my understanding, even the Neanderthals did have either like a longer gestational period or there's something about their birthing rates were a little bit different. So yeah, even that, yeah. I'm glad that we've survived as a species, basically.
Yes. So I think, in my view, the part of the problem is that people are going online, they're seeing these videos and pieces of content, and they're thinking of a time in their life where science somehow failed them with their health, and they haven't actually learned that science is really a method of thinking. and applying
Yes.
that process and that method to any kind of decision making that they arrive at.
Yes, I mean, to reject science per se is, of course, ridiculous. Scientists make mistakes, and there can be bad science, but bad science needs to be replaced by good science, and science is the only.
And I think that I do think that he's currently rejecting science. Like, he's completely ignoring like tons of research to support the existence of like literal biological kind of substantiality for the existence of trans people. And the fact that he's being dismissive of that, in my opinion, does say that he is also being one who is doing the exact thing that he is complaining to other people about currently. So
only way we know to get the correct answer to questions about the natural world. So to reject science is preposterous.
Can I ask you, what do you feel are the greatest risks or problems with science as an industry, or science as it engages with industry? Things that impact, as you say, these mistakes that scientists make.
Yes, I suppose when it gets corrupted by financial concerns, when people are motivated more by financial greed than by the desire for truth. I mean, when it first became clear that smoking caused lung cancer, and with a very high probability caused lung cancer, there was a tendency for some scientists to be bought by the tobacco industry to deny this fact. And so, because scientists are like they're human beings, and so they are potentially corruptible. But fortunately, science has methods in place for overcoming that, and other scientists come along and verify or test the statements of their predecessors. And so science has this self-correcting process, which should take care of that.
Anti-science points will be corrected because science is a self-correcting mechanism. Yes. And I think that the whole trans stuff we will continue, in science will continue to let us know that it is a real phenomenon. The more I'm alive, the more I'm really reckoning with my own like difficulty with nuance and like being able to see through a person who might be being dishonest to me, a little bit of naivete that I may have. And a lot of it I think has to do with like the way that my brain works and some like literal thinking. I just like take people directly at their word and don't believe that they are saying things to me that aren't true, which is unfortunate because people are twisted. Like, it's this very complicated way of navigating through life. And I think that, I can even see how maybe some of these things have been influenced by my Christianity in the past. It's like, if you're a Christian, you are trustworthy. I believe you. If you're like, if you're a Christian man, especially, you know what I mean? God, pretty much like one step down from Jesus, essentially. You know what I mean? So like if a person just like, and they just have confidence, I'm like, I believe you. Sure, whatever you say is right. I'm going to go to hell. Great. Okay, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, super believable, super trustworthy. And so I can maybe see those echoes within me, seeing, Richard Dawkins as this like atheist that I super respected. As I'm leaving Christianity, he was definitely one of the people that I watched so many other of the atheists, but he was definitely one of them. Yeah. And he's written several books about this stuff as well. So that's great. You know what I mean? I think that's good. See you on the flippity flip.